Your Honor, opposing counsel, members of the jury. We are here today because Miss Avery Bancroft solicited a bribe to Chase Cummington. This is already a fact. It all started on March 31st when Miss Bancroft met with Keenan under the pretenses of greasing the wheels in the Gambling Commission. From here on, Bancroft continued Miss Bancroft continued to participate in the acts that were merely suggested by Keenan that resulted in this bribe. Today, we are here to prove predisposition on Miss Bancroft's part. We are here to prove that even without Keenan's suggestions that Miss Bancroft would have otherwise participated in this bribe. We've called 3 witnesses today: Ms. Del Sesto, Mr. Warren, and Ms. Keenan herself. Now, Ms. Del Sesto tells you about a phone call that was made on February 16th, in which she states, "If you are for sale, I'm willing to pay the price, whatever it is." Now, February 16th is before this March 31st meeting, which means that Ms. Bancroft was willing to pay some sort of price to whoever it may have been before Keenan even stepped in the picture. Then we go on to Mr. Warren, who states that Ms. Keenan followed best practices and that there was no clear signs of inducement, and that all of Mrs. Bancroft's statements were very affirmative. We can then move on to Ms. Keenan herself, who sat here, testified to you today that it was Ms. Bancroft that wrote on the napkin. It was Ms. Bancroft that allowed herself to partake in this bribery. Ms. Keenan states that she followed best practices on the years and cases that she has been built in her experience. And to go even further, Ms. Keenan, Ms. Keenan clearly states that she has not broken the law, and it was stated in her instructions by her captain not to do so. So, Bancroft stood before you today and testified that she just happened to come across this proposal, even though they were only issued once in a decade, or a very long time. Ms. Bancroft said that Mrs. Keenan, a very experienced undercover cop, took the stand, lied under oath, and said that no, Ms. Bancroft had not written on the napkin herself. Ms. Bancroft, although having other options, decided to go directly to the point of bribery. Ms. Bancroft did not report Mrs. Keenan. Ms. Bancroft did not report Mr. Hyde. Ms. Bancroft skipped every legal step she could have taken in order to get around bribery, but she didn't. You see, no one forced her hand. Everything that was done in this case, Ms. Keenan doing her investigation completely by the book, and Ms. Bancroft taking the opportunity that she saw. Bribery was committed, but entrapment was not a factor in today's case. No one forced her hand. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Yes, Your Honor. There was only one way out. Today you heard the case of Miss Avery Bancroft, a strong businesswoman who's operating her father's casino. You heard the story of a woman who was trying to protect her casino and her livelihood under threats made by Miss Keenan. And after these threats, she only had one way out: to commit a crime that Miss Keenan forced her to commit. Now, the prosecution says that Miss Keenan, the prosecution says that no one forced her hand. The prosecution says that this began on March 31st. But the prosecution's wrong. Only one person forced this bribe, and that was Miss Keenan. And this did not begin on March 31st. This began in June 2013, when Miss Keenan found out what her boss wanted. The prosecution would have you believe this is the story of a heroic cop that caught a shady businesswoman. This is the story of a businesswoman upholding her business to her values, trying to expand, trying to simply achieve the American dream, be attacked in her moment of vulnerability by a cop that just wanted to get ahead. Today, the defense has taken on a burden. With the affirmative defense of entrapment, we take on the burden of proof. It is our responsibility, and it has been our responsibility throughout this trial, to prove that Miss Bancroft was induced by Miss Keenan. And we have met that burden. We have brought before you Corey Hyde, who testified to Keenan's threats to make him cooperate. We brought before you J.D. Lloyd, who came before you and testified that Keenan didn't document her investigation. Keenan did not have documentation of her training. Keenan didn't have documentation of any kind. And finally, Miss Bancroft came before you and told you the real story of how she tried to make the best proposal, how she tried to earn this license. But Miss Keenan was so intent on catching the big fish, on catching newsworthy crime, and Miss Bancroft was forced into a corner with only one way out. The prosecution tried to prove that Keenan was an upstanding police officer, and this is not true. Keenan lied. Now, lying is part of her job as an undercover cop, but she lied to force people into doing things. She lied to Mr. Hyde, saying that she could put him away in jail. She lied to Miss Bancroft, saying that she could take away her casino. Dr. Warren said that Miss Keenan followed best practices, but she only saw one meeting and one email. She didn't see any of the other meetings. Miss Keenan was able to keep out the threats at one meeting, but there was no documentation of any of the other meetings. She failed to document. There's no real proof that she even has the proper training to conduct an undercover investigation, considering the fact that Miss Lorian couldn't find it anywhere. Her requests for this documentation were denied. For you today, you've heard testimony of some of the threats that Keenan made. Now, I want to read these threats directly so I don't mistake them for you. She said to Ms. Bancroft, "I have friends in high places. You will regret it if you don't go through with it. You will lose everything." These threats are nothing other than inducing. Keenan was forcing Bancroft to do this. She simply wanted to pursue a dream that her father had, to have a good business, to run it well, and to help Midlands. Miss Keenan had a different dream. She had a dream of catching the big fish, a dream of being newsworthy, a dream of no longer having to ticket college students that were drunkenly stumbling from some bar. She had a dream to rise up in the ranks. And she saw a vulnerable woman and an opportunity. Miss Bancroft was forced to do this. Miss Keenan forced this to happen. Miss Bancroft only had one way out. So after reviewing all this evidence, after this trial, in which we met our burden of proof, of inducement, and the prosecution failed to meet theirs, that Miss Bancroft was predisposed. Some of the things that go into predisposition are reputation. And you heard nothing today about Miss Bancroft's reputation, because it is clean. You heard nothing today about Miss Bancroft being predisposed to do this. You heard Miss Keenan engaged. You heard Miss Keenan bring up bribery. According to Dr. Warren, best practice would be for Miss Keenan to allow Miss Bancroft to implicate herself. But how can Miss Bancroft implicate herself if Miss Keenan's writing on the napkin, and all Miss Bancroft ever wrote was to cross it out, to say this isn't what I want? They cannot prove predisposition. They did not prove predisposition, because Miss Bancroft was induced. That is what has been proven today. And based on the evidence, you must find Miss Bancroft not guilty.
Rebuttal.
Yes, Your Honor. Can I approach?
You may.
There was only one way out. And you may be right. The one way out could have been reporting it to the police, like you're supposed to do with any crime. The one way out could have been denying to make a bribe. The one way out could have been cutting ties with Mickey Keenan herself. There were many ways out. And you see, Miss Keenan did her job. And you know what? Lying to an informant, to create an informant, actually, does not prove entrapment. And lack of training does not prove entrapment. Because as Ms. Keenan stated in her testimony, her training would not be in public records due to the undercover nature of her current investigation. So Ms. Lorraine wouldn't find that. And that explains why she could not find any of her training. Hyde sat in on all of these meetings that the defendant said may or may not have happened, and heard Covington say, "You're going to have to give me some very good reasons to vote for your proposal," in which Ms. Bancroft, unprovoked, responded, "How about 100,000 reasons?" Today in court, we've seen many testimonies, many contradictions, but when Ms. Keenan passed over the napkin to Mrs. Bancroft, it was blank. And so there's kind of a gap on how the writing happened. Again, Ms. Keenan didn't need any to read. Ms. Keenan had had over 30 undercover investigations. Ms. Keenan was doing her job as a police officer. Ms. Keenan was finding the source of corruption. There was only one way out. If we looked at this case, and we put it apart, as we've done today, we've seen that there are many ways out. And that Ms. Keenan, with her own free will, could have chose many ways, but she did not. She went straight for bribery. That was the way that Ms. Bancroft chose. And so,
Time.